Yeah, generally when people ask you if you've got how many children I've got, I'm very keen on telling them I've got the 8, you know, because I'm quite proud of that, and I don't really know why, and probably for the wrong reasons. When I was really sort of 16, 17, I was desperate to be married and have 2.2 children or more. And when Simon was born, when was Simon born? In 67, July, I think. No, August 67.
I was born on August the 20th, and they were married in July. But it was all, I mean, he says, you know, they were too young and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Everyone seems to think I did it because it was the right thing to do. As far as I was concerned at the time, I wanted to be married. It was all part of the parcel. Being married, being accepted as an adult and having children, to me, that was... And having a reasonable house, owning a house. That was kind of making it in life, and I was desperate to make it.
I mean, the idea that he was married with a kid at 18 just seemed surreal to me. I think it was a big shock to him just how much responsibility he felt when I was born, really. And I'm not sure if he was quite sort of... well, he was ready for it as anyone is, I suppose.
You have to understand, too, when I was younger, I always thought it'd be great to be famous so that my children would think, cool, my dad's famous. Well, they don't think that way. It's just how it is. It's nothing special.
Realising what he did, it wasn't anything different to me until maybe when I was at school and kids were saying, you know, I remember someone else was saying, oh, your dad's a status quo. Is your mum, so your mum's Susie Quattro, is she?
So I was just telling that the amount of times that people will say, your dad's a dickhead. And I'd say, well, you should say to them, try living with him.
That advice was good, though I couldn't really ignore what they were saying, you know, because even true or not, they were saying horrible things, and I hated it, you know. How dare they?
You'd be going on school trips, you know. So I'd take him down there and I'd say, he'd say, right, bye, Dad. I said, well, I'll just wait until he gets... He said, no, go. I embarrass you that much, do I? Okay. I'll just wait until... No, please go. So I used to take, you know, respect their wishes. Because we do embarrass our children, more times than not. All of us, I'm afraid. As much as we think we're groovy and whatever else, we're still their dad, and that can't be groovy.
Well, he was away an awful lot, when I was sort of 7, 8, 9, 10. That was the period when it was sort of rocking all over the world, was a big hit. You know, they were away for 6 months at a time. I think a lot of the time he'd come back from being on tour, and I think find it quite difficult to slip back into family life. And I seem to remember that causing some tension between my mum and dad. Bearing in mind, Mum thought that he ought to be spending time with us as kids.
My wife at the time thought I should be playing football and doing these kind of things. I find it very difficult to do the things that are associated with being a dad. And at the time as well, I was very wrapped up in my own career. It was one of the reasons perhaps that people like myself shouldn't have children.
I remember being in the lounge and Mum saying, you know, she was pregnant with Kieran at the time. Mum saying, what would you think if Dad and I got divorced, you know? And I just remember turning around to her and going, oh, it won't happen. You know, deny. Yeah, I think it was in November 1979 they actually moved out. So I left here, went to school, and went home to another house, which was a very strange thing to do, ride back to a different house. But a terrible period, you know. I mean, hideous.
I was so wrapped up in the turmoil, if you like, of the divorce and trying to be here. I didn't see Si for some time. I think he went to... His mother put him in a boarding school, and he did that. As I said, I don't really remember much about him from 12, 13 years onwards.
Apart from the occasional phone call, I rarely spoke to him. And so I never really saw him at that sort of nadir, you know, of his excesses. And was probably quite lucky, because it probably would have been quite horrible. They weren't aware of the drugs, because I never did drugs at home or anything. It wasn't until after I was divorced that I'd got into coke, which was the serious one. You know, seeing your dad putting his finger through his nose and showing you that he can put his finger through his septum because of how much cocaine he's done, you know, and saying, you know, he reckoned he probably did, you know, a swimming pool in size of cocaine, you know, like a small mountain of cocaine, probably. It went on like that for years, you know. What a great way to be.
And I was lucky that it just dawned on me, no, I'm not doing that. And the same with drinking. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. It wasn't until he was about 18 that he came to me and said a few things about this, that and the other. Oh. And suddenly we seemed to get on from then onwards.
Teenage years are appalling. I think being homosexual doesn't help a great deal because obviously everyone else is kind of expressing themselves sexually and emotionally to the opposite sex, and you're having to do everything in your power to repress.
He said, Dad, so I said, yeah. He said, Dad, I'm gay. I said, yeah, I'm watching the news, Si. So he finished watching the news and he said, so I'm right, I've got to tell him again. He said, Dad, I said, yeah, you're gay, yeah, and? He said, well, what have you got to say? I said, what do you mean, what have I got to say? He said, I'm gay. I said, yeah. What's it got to do with me, you know? He said, well, I thought you'd be upset. I said, why? He's not going to use mine, are you? I said, it's up to you. It's just, he was so knocked out that I just thought, well, that's how it is. And I still feel that way, it's how it is.
And he will always maintain that I told him, which I didn't. I did not tell him. I told my mum. I went to work and Mum rang all the relatives and told them, including Dad. And the next time I saw him, he said to me, why didn't you feel you could tell me yourself? You know, I would have thought you'd know you could tell your dad that. And that was it. That was as much discussion as there was, really. But he would always insist that I came and said, oh, I'm gay, you know, all that kind of thing. And no, I would never have said that. I wouldn't have put it like that anyway.
He's a great guy. I mean, most of his friends I really like. I find that they seem to have come to terms with things, but perhaps it's because that they are so-called have to come out, you know, and it's a lot to admit. They seem far better balanced and adjusted than the rest of us.
For the last few years, I've been retraining in classical singing, basically, and in order to finance that, it just happened that I managed to get temporarily the job working for the band as a PA.
You know, when we're on the road, he's there all the time. He wakes me up. Last thing I see is him when I go to bed. He makes sure that everything's in, checks the band out, checks me out, that's it, it's gone. Then he calls us first thing in the morning. It's the first thing we see down at reception is him. He's the first one that gets on the bus. Simon, yeah, we're here, Simon.
I felt much closer to him in recent years because I've had more opportunity to spend time with him. And also, he'd rather relate to another adult than a child. I think it's just, you know, he finds it easier.
Since that period when he was 18 and the coming out and all that, and then eventually coming to work and seeing him as an adult, I just seem to know him now, and that's it. There doesn't seem to be, oh, I didn't know that about you, son. Oh, I'm so sorry. To me, that seems to be too much TV script lives. It's so wonderful, you know.
Yeah.
To me, it's 90% bullshit. We just happen to be father and son, and we get on all right.
Athlete Jamie Bolch in Next of Kin on BBC Two at